Welcome, everyone, to episode 77 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan, coming to you from the continent of California. It's a great Thursday night out here as we record this podcast. So you can check out all episodes, all 77 episodes of the Gully Blanchard podcast at nocoastbias.com, where you can also check out some of the wrestling articles I've written. We're also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play Music, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, just search Gully Blanchard. All 77 episodes will pull up. This was originally a one-man podcast. I brought in a couple of my friends to do some of the episodes with me. Life kind of happened. We all went our separate ways with that, so I decided to come back and interview some people that I find interesting about topics that I personally find interesting. It could be stuff from the world of WWE, the NFL, NBA, baseball. Really all depends on, who I'm talking with for the week, what's going on in the world, what's interesting. So you can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLYBLANCHARD. I have finally recovered from my 13-mile Spartan race at Squaw Valley in Lake Tahoe. My legs don't feel like jello anymore, so that's a win. So what I'd like to do tonight is bring in a guest I've wanted to talk to for a while. I'm a big fan of her through Twitter. Really good follow. She does a lot of work with Fangirl Sports Pod. I'm going to let her tell you guys where you can find all her stuff. But Stephanie McCarroll, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So I know you do some work with the Warriors and the Jags through Fangirl, but for those who don't know, what is Fangirl Sports? Where can they follow you and the different work that you do?
Okay, so Fangirl Sports Network is the first all women-owned. It's the very first sports network that is all female coverage. So every single team has their own very own fangirl who covers a team, and it's really our goal and our mission to get more female fans into sports. And we never feel that there's a dumb question, and even though we know quite a bit, and we are us ourselves, many of us are athletes or former athletes, what we want to do is just make female creative content. So, we own the fact that we're women and we're girls, but we like that about ourselves, and that girls, like sports too. And so it's really a fun way, a network to, it gives you a different outlook on sports, not just, the X's and O's, but everything about sports. And you can find me, I covering the Jaguars this season, and you can find me at Jaguars FGSN for the NFL, and for the NBA, because I'm from the Bay Area, I cover the Warriors on Warriors FGSN.
Outstanding. So I know you guys do a lot of good work, and it's really fun to see the different articles that are, or different podcasts that are covered in different columns. I know I've checked out the Eagles one from time and again, so definitely appreciate what you guys do over there. I want to get into the Jags. I know you're covering them this year. Last Sunday, they played the Jets and got the win. And what were some of your biggest takeaways from that game?
It's got to be the fact that Bortles had a good game. I mean, the defense is always going to be a really super strong, front seven, and also, the corners, and they're able to, the secondary is able to cover, and everybody knows that they're the top rated defense. But Bortles, I think I'm going to try to see. I know he threw for over 300 yards. He has 2 TDs. He did have the one interception, but it was, was tipped. So it wasn't all on him. But, and that's, quarterbacks are still going to have the interception, but he's actually making the offense go. So to me, it's really interesting, because from a poor, coming off the Titans loss, he only scored 6 points, or the offense scored 6 points. So him coming back and having such a strong game, and, beating the Jets with an exclamation point, I think really showed that he does have the offense, he has the ability, and he has the tools to do it. So whether or not he shows up or not, that's really the question. But it really comes down to that. And I think that they have the ability to beat anybody in the league.
I would agree. I think one thing that I know a lot of NFL fans, at least one of my takeaways was from their game against the Patriots, was it felt like the offense kind of went vanilla towards the end of that game. To where it seemed like it was a lot of Fournette 1, Fournette 2nd down, Bortles 3 yards before the sticks on the third down. I still contend I think they had enough talent on defense and offense to beat the Patriots. But one thing that I wanted to see them do this year, which I think was their big Achilles heel against in the AFC title game, was I wanted to see that offense take the next step to where they were actively beating teams with the offense. I think one thing they did a lot last year was they let the defense, they let the defense give them about 10 points, and they just tried to get to 17 or get to 20, so to speak. I think this year the offense, with adding Dante Moncrief and the Keelan Cole, I know Marquise Lee's out, and I know the two Allens went on to free agency, and Fournette's been hurt for a while, but I do find this offense to be an offense that can score points. And I think that was their Achilles heel against the Titans and against the Patriots last year. So having an offense that could actively go out and is aggressive on each possession is going to be key for them moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the Jags have really stood out, and they've been on somewhat of a revenge mission these past, I would say the past 4 games have all been revenge games. They had, like you said, the Patriots they faced, and they wanted to definitely beat the Jets. And of course they lost barely. It was a tough loss for them against the Titans. But now they're going against the Chiefs, and there's a lot of talk about the Chiefs. Of course went 4-0. They're 4-0 going into this game. But I don't think that the Chiefs have faced the defense like the Jags up to now. I don't think Mahomes has really seen like an elite premier defense. And so I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging. In fact, I would guess, in fact, that it will be, because they just put more pressure. I mean, Caleb Campbell's breathing down his neck. Malik Jackson will be down there. There's going to, they have Ngakoue. And so it's gonna be tough. And then even, the secondary is gonna be interesting. I know Jalen Ramsey was talking a lot of trash today about Tyreek Hill. And and what's interesting about it is, I am one of those people that I have no problem with trash talk as long as they can back it up. And he has traditionally backed it up. So it's going to be a fun game. I think that's the game of the week for sure.
Absolutely. That was the one game. And even as an Eagles fan, I know we're playing Minnesota, but I know that Jags Chiefs game, because it just seems like a contrast where you have, arguably the most exciting offense in the league right now. I think they're neck and neck with the Rams going against the top defense in the league, and especially in the league right now to where defense is not the selling point. Like, there are not those traditional shutdown defenses where you really have to worry. But I think other than Jacksonville, I think Tennessee's defense is coming on. I mean, I know they put a good hurting on Philadelphia last week, and they obviously held Jacksonville to 9 points, which in this league is not, it's not easy to do, just to hold a team to 9 points. So I do think the Titans defense is impressive, but I think you're right. I think Jacksonville, they're arguably the top defense in the league going against arguably the top offense in the league. And I think, I don't want to take away anything that Mahomes has done, but you're right. He hasn't been doing this against top tier defenses. I know Pittsburgh doesn't exactly scare you with their defense. The Niners have their issues on the defensive side of the ball. Denver played him well the first half. I just think in the second half, the Chiefs took it up a notch. So I am interested to see how a young quarterback does against a corner like Jalen Ramsey, who I'm a big Jalen Ramsey fan, because I like you. I like players that can trash talk. I like players that can back it up, because I've always been in the belief that if you're the 1% of the 1% of the 1% to be in that position, especially as physical of a position as cornerback, and you can be labeled as a shutdown corner and have your stats do the talking for you, I think that's something that should be celebrated. So I am really interested to see how Mahomes does against an interior rush with Campbell and Jackson and Yannick as well. So I think it's going to be, if nothing else, it'll be a fun contrast of styles.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think it's going to, there's some teams that are really standing out, and of course KC's one, and the Rams is obvious. And then I think Jags are up there. They're fighting to be, on the top echelon of the NFL. So, I know they're definitely looking to get the AFC South again, but I think they want the AFC title and they want to go to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And I think like I said, I think it is the game of the week. The one thing that I am most interested to see, and I know we touched on it earlier, is I think this game is going to come down to, can Blake Bortles go step for step with Mahomes on offense? Because I do think that, if Mahomes gets up 2 touchdowns, that might be where I worry about, is Bortles. Because if I'm not mistaken, Fournette is either questionable or he's out for this game. I know Yeldon has been taking on a lot of the work there as well, but I'm interested to see if Bortles with, your D.D. Westbrook and your Dante Moncrief, can he put up enough points to keep a defense into that game? With the odd chance that Mahomes is the real deal and does end up putting 21 to 28 points up on this defense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening, but I mean, there's always that ability, and I think that's really where it's going to be the difference is, can you keep up with the offense? That's all we're looking, or what I'm looking for Blake to do. Because the defense is going to go toe-to-toe with, or even take over as far as the Chiefs defense. I mean, there's no comparison there. So if he can at least keep up with, when it on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's going to show. And it seems like there's a hero every week. I mean, first week was that great catch that Cole had. And then Fournette's been out, and then he's out again. So we know he's not going to play on Sunday. But the running backs are coming up. They're stepping up. They're, and he's always got somewhere to go with the ball, and he's throwing accurately. So you can't really fault the guy because I'm not sure if he's been coached up or he's just has a new side or he's really taking, his position seriously, but he's a totally different quarterback than what we've seen in years past.
Absolutely. I think within the last game, especially against the Jets, and that's a secondary that's got no slouches in it. Jamal Adams is one heck of a safety back there. And I think to be able to go and be on the aggressive against that defense is definitely going to be something that you're going to need to bring with you to that Chiefs game, because that is a fast offense. And I am interested to see, I think the one X factor for Kansas City, and I'm interested to see this because I know against New England, I felt the focal point was, do everything we can to take Gronkowski out of the game. And I could see that with the double teams. But to me, if you double team, Kelce, then you're leaving someone alone on Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill's a fast enough receiver that eventually he's going to get behind your coverage. So I'm interested to see who they put on Kelce or around Kelce, because the Chiefs do have a lot of weapons, but I do think that the Jaguars have a lot of speed and discipline in their secondary to keep up with those guys.
Yeah, there was a couple of thoughts on that earlier. My opinion is that Gibson will probably be the best matchup as far as size on Kelce because he's a big guy. So I would think that you're going to have to put a safety on him, and watch him because, Mahomes has no problem going up the middle with Kelce or, even those slants. So that's what I predict. We'll see if the game actually happens that way, but I think that's going to be the best matchup.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Kelce's definitely one of the top tier tight ends in the league. So to be able to have someone on him that can shadow him, can make life difficult for him when he gets in those seam routes. So I think that's somewhere the seam and the flatter, I think, is where Kelce does his most damage, especially with Mahomes and, his accuracy that he's shown this season. So I'll be interested to see, how that secondary does everything from a tactical standpoint, because there are a lot of weapons on that team. And, if you can put Kelce at least in a position to where he can't beat you in the seam routes, I think that will definitely limit Mahomes' options this game.
Yeah, I agree. And he has a lot in the arsenal. I mean, it's like Tyreek Hill, and then you have Kelce, and, there's just so many options that he has, and he's very accurate. He puts it in places that is tough to defend. I mean, in some cases you can't defend it because it's so on point. So, I mean, we've seen some great things from Mahomes, but I think this is the defense that, is really waiting to see what they can do against him now.
Absolutely. One player that I am interested to see how they do for the Jags is I've really started to pay attention more to what D.D. Westbrook is doing. I know he had a bit of a checkered past coming out of Oklahoma, but he does seem like he's emerged as a good target for Bortles, and especially with, losing Robinson and Hearns in the offseason. I think it's been impressive to see how that wide receiver core, even with the injury to Marquise Lee, that receiving core has definitely stepped up and made Bortles, has given Bortles a lot of different options and a lot of different, it's improved definitely Bortles' accuracy this year so far, to me at least.
Yeah, D.D. Westbrook has had some pretty good plays and some really pickup plays, and he's solid. He's a solid receiver, and him with Moncrief and, like I said, Cole, they're all, there's not been one standout, but they're all doing their job, and that's to get open. And so they find a way, and Bortle finds them. And so, you can't really complain about that. They're finding a way to get the ball, and, they're doing their job. And even though they lost their number one wideout, it still shows that they're able to get it done. So I think that's the important thing.
Absolutely. So I want to transition a little bit off the Jags and get into the Seattle Seahawks, and one player who recently was injured from the Seahawks. I know you and Tracy talked about this on the last podcast, but I want to bring it up again. Earl Thomas had a fractured leg. He was carted off. It was an unfortunate situation. He did, he flipped the middle finger to the Seahawks sideline. It was something that was definitely polarizing. Myself personally, I've never fractured my leg. I've never played pro football. So I have a real hard time judging Earl Thomas from a negative standpoint for what he did, especially in the heat of the moment when you realize, your whole career or, your potential earnings are going to be in jeopardy. But I wanted to get your opinion again on how did you absorb that whole process as far as Earl Thomas from, the holdout to the game against the Cardinals to how that impacts him in the future? Because you definitely had an interesting opinion about that.
Well, this goes back pretty far. The whole reason I got into sports is, I went to law school, and how I put myself through law school is I was a paralegal at a firm, and we represented injured athletes. And then pretty soon after graduating law school, that's what I did. So I have a sensitive spot for athletes. One, I was a Division I athlete. I know what it's like to kind of put your body on the line. And, for me, I was just doing it from my college. And, you do things, that you push yourself for. When you're that type of an athlete, you do things because you want to win, and it takes a certain mindset. But when these guys are out there, they're really putting their bodies on the line day in and day out. And I feel for that. I can empathize with that. And one of the reasons he decided to hold out, which is the fourth year of the last year of his contract with Seattle, was he was concerned that he was going to get injured. He got injured last year. And, it's a whole process going through an injury, especially a season-ending injury, where you have to get your mind right, your body right. It's a ton of work, and it's hours and hours into rehab and your medical. And a lot of people don't realize, what goes into that. So he didn't want to go into the last year of his contract, without some guarantee for injury. And I don't blame athletes for that, because at the end of the day, it's your body. I mean, how much do you value your leg or your arm or your back or your head? I mean, these athletes, this is, the average life or career span is 3.5 years for most football players in the NFL. So I don't have a problem with them holding out. I don't think an NFL team would blink twice about letting someone go, and they have, and they do every day. But for some reason, fans have this negative feeling when a player holds out because they say, oh, he signed a contract. But NFL teams do it all the time. They cut them even though there's a contract. So I don't know. And then the thing is somehow, some way, he got talked into returning, and that's the game that he went down, like you said, got a fracture. So my opinion was that it was aimed at the sideline, because most likely somebody on the sideline, and I have my theories, talked him into it, which was Pete Carroll. But that's what I think. I'm just surmising. So I'm surmising, but one of the reasons that I think that is because at the press conference, Pete Carroll basically said, I had worked so hard with Earl. I had gotten him to a closer spot with the team. We thought I had established trust again. And then this happened, and it's so unfortunate. But he was kind of blowing smoke on it. He wouldn't address the actual flip off, even when it was a direct question. But the inference created was that he was the one that convinced Earl to come back. And I think that there might be some sour feelings over that.
Yeah, I think one thing that bothered me the most about the whole situation, and I'm sort of like you, I understand that these guys and girls as well, they put their bodies on the line. This is a full-time job. And I think a lot of times as fans, you see these guys on TV for 3 hours a week doing this sport or playing a game that we may have grown up playing, and we wish we could still play at a high level, and we want to be able to be out there. So we kind of feel like, well, if Earl Thomas isn't doing anything that I couldn't do. And I think it's a misguided opinion. For me, these guys are athletes that put 24 hours a day, 7 days a week into their body, whether it be, training, whether it be recovery, whether it be, film study, or whether it be nutrition or things of that nature. So I've always found it interesting to where you have, a fan base that is so pro management, but yet they're so pro player in who they revel. For example, like you're not going to see anyone in Seattle wearing a jersey of the owner. Like they're going to be wearing an Earl Thomas jersey or a Russell Wilson jersey. So they're pro player in some aspects, but then they're pro management when, these guys have to get moved on a different department or have to get moved on to different teams. Like I don't imagine there would have been as much of an uproar in Seattle if Earl Thomas would have been waived at the end of the year as there was if he showed emotion and flipped off the fan base. And I think it's a really interesting dichotomy because these guys are putting their body on the line for this, and we don't know if Earl Thomas is going into being in his 30s. We don't know how his leg's going to recover from this. So this might have very well been the end of the Legion of Boom, and it might have very well been the end of watching Earl Thomas at a high level. And that's got to be difficult for him as an athlete. Like this is his earning. This is setting him up for the future. And it's just interesting to me to where you see fans that have such an issue with that, yet they have no problem backing management when it comes to why they shouldn't pay, Earl Thomas X amount of dollars, when as a fan of that sort of management decision, you wouldn't feel comfortable, not you specifically, Stephanie, but you wouldn't feel comfortable as a fan if your boss is like, hey, you know what, we're not going to pay you what you think you're worth, but you still have to come to work. And if you get hurt on the job, then we can just let you go. Like if you were to tell most of those same fans, they'd have a huge problem with that. But when it's management, it's like, oh, well, we understand that it's what the team has to do. And it's a very interesting double-edged sword with that.
Yeah. And people will say, well, they get paid, oh, boohoo, he's only getting $4 million. And like, but you have to think, he missed 3 games and that they deduct for that. And he, 1/3 of his salary goes to his agent. He has to pay NFLPA dues, for the union. It's not that simple. And it's not, and then 40% goes to taxes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you like break it down, there's this really small window to earn, and I just can't fall. And not everybody gets Aaron Rodgers money. Not everybody gets, Jimmy Garoppolo money. Those are the extreme cases. But someone like Earl Thomas, who is that makes valuable contributions, I don't see a problem with him wanting a little bit more, and especially the injury clause, which is what he wanted. Because for this very reason. And I think we saw what's going out. And that's why I support Le'Veon Bell doing what he's doing, because ultimately I just think that it's his body. If he believes that it's worth, whatever it's worth, then that's only he can make that decision. Only those players can make that. We don't really have a clue what's going beyond, that. They don't know how many years they think they can do this, because like running backs and safeties, they're the most hit positions out of anybody on the field. Mm-hmm. You take the most hits. So, it's just something that people have to realize there's just more to it. It's just not that cut and dried.
And I think one disconnect that I think a lot of fans have that get upset at athletes, and I understand where athletes are coming from, because my perspective has always been, I don't necessarily think the athletes want more money, which for one, they should be entitled to, because they're the ones driving the ship. They're the ones drawing the ratings. People are paying to watch certain players play. For example, this game tonight, Patriots and Colts, if it was Brian Hoyer against Jacoby Brissett, not a lot of people are going to be watching. But since it's Tom Brady against Andrew Luck, it's going to draw higher ratings, which brings higher revenue dollars to the NFL. what I mean by that is I think that I understand where an Aaron Donald might want to hold out, and I understand where a Le'Veon Bell might want to hold out, or even an Earl Thomas, because I don't think it's more of a guarantee. I don't think they want, $30 million more than their initial deal. I think it's more of I want the security and I want the guarantee that I'm going to make something if I have a fractured leg, and I feel like I deserve to be paid as much as the next man is paid. And I think that's the issue that I have no problem with, to where these guys play a physical sport. Le'Veon Bell, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't have a problem giving Le'Veon Bell the ball 300 times. And right. Then once that workload is, once that becomes too much, a perfect example, that's DeMarco Murray. The Cowboys paid for the touches. The Eagles and the Titans paid for what happened after the touches, where Murray wasn't as productive. And I think that's the fear that Le'Veon Bell has, is that I've given you my body for all these years, and I don't necessarily want more money. I just want a security to where if my production dips, because, running backs and safeties and D tackles are some of the most physical positions in the game, I want to know that I'm still going to be compensated. And I think that's something that, as a fan, fans would want their own workplace to provide for them. So it's always interesting. And I think the disconnect comes from the amount of money that, we hear these contracts being tossed around. Like, Aaron Rodgers gets $100 million guaranteed, or Kirk Cousins gets $90 million guaranteed. And I think fans hear that and they think $90 million guaranteed is $90 million in their pocket. And like you said, some of that goes to taxes or dues, or, player dues or things, or agents. And I think fans have the disconnect to where these guys are making millions of dollars to play a game that I would play for free. And the reality is most of them wouldn't play it for free. And they'd also want the same guarantee that Le'Veon Bell is asking for. And by all means, he's earned.
Yeah. And a lot of the one thing this goes back to all the time, and I don't know why fans don't think about this, but if you were to get hurt on the job, if you're a fireman or a policeman or whatever, secretary, whatever you do, if you get hurt on the job in the United States of America, you get workers' comp and you get lifetime medical. Okay. Mm-hmm. NFL players do not. They do not get lifetime medical. They don't retire with a medical. And after you've have that kind of medical history where they, in the off season, they literally go to their surgeons in drones. Okay. They have all these surgeries. They have bad knees. They have bad, shoulders. They have, bad legs, hips, backs, whatever. They can't get covered by Medicare or any kind of medical coverage. So if they can get coverage, it's an arm and a leg, literally. Like a lot of these, these athletes have to pay for this for the rest of their lives. And the NFL is over here making billions of dollars, but won't take care of the retired athlete, which I think is hideous. So when they are making money, when they have the contracts, I don't think there's anything wrong with negotiating all those costs up front, because they know they're going to have them. And, that it's just reality. This is something that needs to happen. And it's just unfortunate that these players that we worship, so to speak, we talk about them. We're like, yeah, this is why we cheer. This is why we have jobs. This is, why we love it, the sport so much. But then when they go down, they're very easily forgotten. And it's really sad that the NFL just leaves them hanging.
I absolutely agree. Now, I want to transition off the heavy heavy NFL stuff to something a little bit lighter. You are from the Bay Area. I know you do some work with Warriors Fangirl Sports Network as well. Warriors are pretty good. Breaking news, spoiler alert, guys. The Warriors have done quite well for themselves in the last 4 or 5 years. Don't know if you've heard, they've won some titles. They've scored a bunch of points. They've signed a couple free agents. They've done well for themselves.
Yes.
So I want to talk about 2 of their additions this year. I am a lifelong Sacramento Kings fan. I couldn't have been happier when I found out you guys got DeMarcus Cousins. I hope he gets a ring. I hope he gets to have that joy for all the years of misery that Sacramento brought to him. But I want to talk about not only him, but Jonas Jerebko, who I think is one of the more underrated additions of the team this year. How do you envision those 2 fitting into Steve Kerr's rotation?
Well, we're not going to see Boogie for probably, I would say like December, January is what they're estimating, based on, his injury. And that's okay. The Warriors can afford to do that. I mean, I think 2016 taught the Warriors quite a bit, because even though they went 73 games, without the best team ever, which is what they really wanted. It really tired them out. And so and they got injured, there was, most of them were playing injured by the time it, got to the playoffs. And I think they learned a lesson. And even though they obviously went to the finals, that stretched 7 games and it showed, and they needed everybody healthy. So I think they just have a different mindset and maturity about them, that they don't have to win every single game. It's just basically what matters is getting to the playoffs, not even winning, anymore. I mean, they kind of or not necessarily but the Rockets were, winning, and they were showing, they obviously had the number 1 seed, but the Warriors didn't get hung up on that. They just played their game, and it was good. So they have the luxury of letting Boogie get well, and then him coming on in a time where he can probably do a lot of damage. So I think it was a win-win situation for both of them. Obviously, he's one of the best. Best centers in the game. Something that the Warriors have always, gone small with when they really wanted to get something going, but at times, it's really going to be interesting because now Draymond can do his small forward role, and it's going to be amazing to see all 5 of those 5 All-Stars playing together. So I think that's going to be interesting. Jerebko, obviously, he was a fantastic pickup. He's a shooter. I think he's going to provide a lot of minutes for Clay and Steph, and even Draymond. He can put up solid numbers. He's going to be he can defend, and he can also play off the wing, which I think the Warriors needed anyway. So I think it's going to be hard. How do you defend that? It's tough. All these players are so good, so I think it was great.
Yeah, I think one thing that I took away from the past couple of years with them is I do think you're right in the fact that the year they won 73-9, I think they wanted the label of the greatest team ever. And I think that may, hindsight's always 20/20 with those kind of things. And I do think that may have played a role at the collapse against Cleveland at the end of that finals. But I do think their thought process last season, where they would take a couple games off, or they'd rest their starters, or it'd be kind of staggered, I think that really paid its dividends in games 6 and 7 against the Rockets, to where you saw the Rockets do everything they could to get that number 1 seed, to get that home court. And I think they did. They were afflicted by some of the same problems that Golden State was the year they wanted the 73 wins, where come game 6 and 7, they just didn't have the legs to keep up. And I think that's where Golden State really took it to them. And, being able to get Iggy back, and the injury to Chris Paul, we may never know, how that would have ended if Paul would have stayed healthy for those last 2 games. But I definitely think that the team, the Warriors, do a very good job staggering those minutes, and they understand that it's not an 82-game season. It's my math escapes. It's about a 102-game season, give or take. So I think they do a really good job staggering that, and I think adding Jerebko and Cousins is going to even allow them to extend those minutes. I think Jerebko is a huge addition because he does a lot of the things that I think I haven't seen a center be able to pass that good on that team since Andrew Bogut. And I think Boogie's an excellent passer. And I saw that, firsthand when he was in Sacramento. So I think that's going to allow them to stagger out the minutes of a Draymond or a Klay Thompson, because that way you can go big with a Jerebko and Cousins lineup towards the early part of 2019. So I think if nothing else, this is going to be another year. It's going to be the last year at Oracle, but it's going to be a year where it's going to be a lot of fun basketball. And I'm looking forward to the night to where all 5 All-Stars are on the court together and they all put it together, and there's nothing a team can do to stop them.
Yeah, I definitely think, obviously they're the team to beat. There's a lot of buzz right now about the Lakers because LeBron went there, but the Warriors are still the team to beat, and especially now in their free agency and how it went. They don't plan on losing for quite a while. So, the Warriors are definitely have a good thing going, and I think they know it. And so, we just have to wait and see, but it's so far they've looked pretty good. They've and they didn't win the preseason opener, but it's like it doesn't even matter. Nobody's going to even start freaking out anymore in October.
Yeah, I think they've all learned.
Yeah, so it's just, they're gonna do what they do, and they're gonna win, and they're gonna, make it. Obviously, they're too good of a team not to make the playoffs. So that's not the issue. They're just going to, set it on cruise control, and they're gonna, do what they do.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway I got from last year with them is there's more value in being healthy for your game 6 or your game 7 of the Western Conference Finals than it is winning a game in March against the Charlotte Hornets. I think that's where they value team play, and they value the chemistry of the team. And I think the regular season is kind of it's kind of an extended preseason in a sense, to where you want to get, especially with adding Jerebko and Cousins, you want to get an understanding of how to fit those guys into the rotation, how to make, install offensive sets to really maximize what those guys do well. And I think those dividends again are going to pay off in, the game 5, the game 6, the game 7, if they don't get home court advantage, if they have to travel to Houston or to Los Angeles, or if they have to play, a good Portland team in the playoffs. It's going to definitely help them, because they've been able to understand how to stagger and get that rest and have those fresh legs come game 6 or 7. Because you also have to think from the other team standpoint, those teams have to do so much just to keep up with the Warriors from a stamina standpoint and a shooting standpoint, that I think it's what happened with the Rockets last year. With the Rockets, I think just got tired at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to it. I mean, the MVP didn't show up like I thought he would during, when facing the Warriors. Chris Paul, he's a good player when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, he's just, he turns it up a notch. His veteran level, he's a tough opponent, in the playoffs. It's just, and if he's healthy, he's someone that has to really be, watched. But I know that it's very much underrated, but the Warriors are very good defensively, and especially like players like Klay Thompson, who consistently wins his matchups, and Draymond, they curb that a lot. Like a great player like James Harden gets silenced, and I think that there's just not enough emphasis on that defense. So, hopefully, I know everyone concentrates on their offensive skill, but their defense is solid, and so it's like from both angles, they're just a team to beat.
Absolutely. I think that is one thing that gets underrated, gets undervalued with watching them from a national standpoint is, it's a team that can put up 120 or 130 a night they put it all together, but it's also a team that is going to swarm you defensively. And it's a team that is big enough and is athletic enough to switch everything, which is huge when you have such the 3-ball era that we're playing in right now. It's a team that switches well. Their rotations are generally pretty solid on defense, and it's a team that you have to change the way that you play offense if you're the opposing team to keep up with them. And I think the Warriors know that, and they know how to defend that. And it makes it very difficult for teams to get up on that team and stay up on them.
Yeah, it's it's different, and they like to play fast, and they're willing to take any, challenge that comes at them. And, they're certainly fun to watch. I mean, I think Steph, I've said this a few times, but I feel like what Steph did for the 3-point shot is what Michael Jordan did for the slam dunk. I mean, he literally can just make everybody in awe in the stadium with his shots, so it's exciting and it's fun and it's neat to see. But, there's just the very, underlying basketball skills that they possess is what's winning them now 3 championships out of 4.
Absolutely. So I know this is their last year at Oracle. I want to get your thoughts as we wind this down. What are your thoughts on them leaving Oracle for the Chase Center in San Francisco?
Well, I'll say first is Oracle is unlike any stadium I've ever been to. I think they have the best fans in the world, and I know there's been some talk about the new stadium, AT&T, like if it's going to kind of, I don't know what the word is, like if it's going to price out some of those longtime fans. But Warriors right now, Oracle's so expensive as it is that I think that the diehards are going to definitely stay. I think some of them, it's going to be different. I just hope that the atmosphere is the same. I've seen the stadium. I've seen pictures of it getting built. It looks like it's state of the art. I mean, the Warriors and their ownership don't do anything halfway. So I can just imagine that it's going to be a really neat experience. And I think that they're trying to find a way to relate to the fans, but also making it like the best NBA experience that they can get. So, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. Like I said, I grew up in the Bay Area, so I didn't think when the Giants, the San Francisco Giants went to, then it was the AT&T ballpark. I think it was, I forgot what they originally named it, but it wasn't
AT&T Park or something.
I forgot what it was, but at first everybody was there and they had their Blackberries, and I totally remember it, and it seemed very corporate, and it was just like, these aren't the fans from Candlestick. I remember thinking to myself, but then in time, it loses that, that newness, and so the fans will always come out. So I'm hopeful. I think that, and now AT&T Park for the Giants is one of the best ballparks, and they have a losing season and they still sell out every game. So I think that where it is in San Francisco, the Bay Area has a rich sports history. The Bay Area fans are like, New York fans in that sense, where it's a place in the world where you can see two NFL teams, two relatively close NBA teams. You can see two baseball teams, and then you also have a hockey team where they support such a small area can support, all these 5 major league sports teams plus 2 in collegiate, divisions. So I think the Bay Area is just really strong, and I think that it's going to end up being a really nice place for fans to go. And I hope that the Warriors, provide a good place for fans.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap this up, but I want to give you the floor to let people know. Have you let people know where they can follow all your work with the Warriors, the Jags, where they can follow all your stuff on Twitter. So, Steph, the floor is yours. Let them know where you can be found.
Okay, so yes, I'm Stephanie McCarroll. I write for Jaguars Fangirl, and that's Jaguars FGSN. I write for the Warriors at Warriors FGSN, and also my personal account is SoCali Steph.
All right. Thank you very much for everything. So my name is Ryan. You can follow me at Twitter, on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. All 77 episodes of the podcast are available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere you find podcasts. You can check out my writing for the Sacramento Kings at royalpain.com. You can check out all the podcasts and all the wrestling writing that I do at nocoastbias.com. That is going to be it for this week. Next week, I'll be back with Cameron Hawkins from the South Congress podcast. We'll talk a little bit of WWE, probably some Venom, some sports, things of that nature. So until then, thank you guys very much for checking us out. Stephanie, thank you very much for making the time, and we'll be back again next week.
Thanks for having me on.